Hey guys, welcome back to Baddie and a Book. My name is Gabby, and today let's chit chat. Let's talk about all the books that BookTok has recommended, that's all over BookTok and BookTube, that I will probably never read. So let's jump right into it. So the first book on my little handy dandy list that I've come up with, because I have watched my fair share of BookTok videos, YouTube videos surrounding books since I started reading about a year ago. It's probably been about a year now since I started getting back into books, and we can thank BookTube for that, because that's where I kind of started my journey back into reading and where my interest kind of took a turn. Like, I was like, ooh, I'm so interested. So of all of those videos, these books have been mentioned, and I was either like meh or hell no. So the first book that we're going to talk about is a very hyped up book on BookTok and BookTube. I've heard so many good things about this particular book, but I've also heard some bad things, but mostly good things about the book. I do have other books by this author that I'm really excited to read, but this particular book, you won't catch me reading. This is called Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas, and the reason for me not wanting to read this book is specifically the age gap. Now let me explain. I can do an age gap romance, okay? I can do an age gap perfectly fine, but the younger person has to be at least 25. And my thing is that in this particular book, the age gap is astronomical. Not really, but it's pretty huge. The younger person, and I believe is the female in the book, is 19, and then the guy is 38. And this is just, I don't know if it's just me, but it's low-key kind of disgusting to me. Now, mind you, they're both adults, so adults, y'all can do whatever you want, right? But like, I don't want to read about that. Like, ew. What does a 38-year-old see in a 19-year-old? And as a 38-year-old, why are you not dating someone 25 and up? Like, why aren't those women interested in you? Like, why are you going all the way down to 18, 19 years old? Now, I will say there are exceptions to the rule when it comes to age gaps and things of that nature. Hey guys, Editing Gabby here. I wanted to clarify what I mean by this, because I kind of like brushed past it. So when I say that there are some cases exceptions to the rule, 95% of the time there is no exception to the rule. Like, the exception is not there. And what I mean by that is that the couple who has an age gap relationship where one of the parties is under 25, keywords, under, or key context, under 25, and there's a 10 plus age gap there, it's very rare that you find that both parties have genuine intentions, that they're operating from a healthy moral standpoint, and that they are a healthy relationship off of like genuine circumstances. A lot of times, most cases, at least from what I've seen, from what I've come across, from the people that I know that have been in age gap relationships, myself included, there is a level of controlling, manipulation. There's a level of like being sought after because you're younger from a sexual standpoint, and potentially abuse. And it's not to say that we're in 2022, so it's not to say that relationships with someone who you're closer in age with, you're going to have a phenomenal relationship, and that there aren't those things and components in those relationships. But almost every single relationship that I've seen where there's a 10 plus age gap, and like the older party is like seeking out or doesn't feel morally wrong about pursuing someone under the age of 25, most of the time, not only is it disgusting, at least in my fucking opinion, but most of the time they're not seeking that connection. They're not seeking that person for morally correct or morally good things, morally good reasons. See, I'm just getting flustered even thinking about it, because it's just fucking gross. But yeah, most of the time they're not doing it from a good moral standpoint is really all that I'm saying. So yeah. Anyways, back to it. But someone who is like 19, 18, 19, even 20, like, but specifically 18 and 19, a 10 plus age gap, it's like, it doesn't even make any sense. You're in two completely different places in your life when you're at 18, 19 years old. You're just getting started in the real world. Like, and again, there are exceptions to this rule, but I certainly don't want to read about it. And as soon as I heard that particular feature of the book, or that was a trope in the book, I was like, nah, not for me. I prefer for the one of the characters, whoever is younger, because there are age gap romances where the guy is the younger one in the relationship, but in this case it is a female. But like, I prefer for them to be at least 25. Like, at least 25. Like, you don't really become, at least for me, my experience, and like the people that I know that are close to me, like, you don't really get to be an adult, and your mind doesn't fully, your mind completely changes from age 18 to 25. 25 is when you're kind of like, okay, we're solid. I kind of know, you know, how this works, how life works. I know how to be an adult, etc., etc. But like, no, I just don't know. I don't want to read about it. Next one isn't by the same author. And this one I've heard meh things about on BookTok and BookTube. But it's called Credence by Penelope Douglas. I'm sorry, what? This apparently is a relationship between a girl and her step uncle and step cousins. I'm sorry, what? Like, what? And I haven't read any of her other books, but if any of her other books have these type of tropes in them or anything similar to these two tropes, I'm gonna be really, really disappointed, because I don't want to read about that. Like, that is too close to uncomfort, too close to morally wrong. It is morally wrong, actually, in my opinion, but subjective because they're not technically, but ew, like ew. Anyways, moving on to the next. The next one is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. So now this one, the movie actually came out shortly after I started getting into BookTok and BookTube. And I told myself, I was like, I'm gonna read the book first before I watch the movie. I lied. I went and I watched the movie, and I do have the book, but like, I don't know if I'll ever like pick it up, or I might wait a while to pick it up. I don't know. Because I've already seen the movie, and I know that the movie is essentially different from the book itself, I don't see myself actually picking up the book anytime soon, just because I've already kind of been spoiled and everything. I know what the story is about and like all of that. So yeah, I shouldn't have watched the movie first, but I did, and now we're here. The next one is another one that I spoiled myself on, not thinking that I would ever read the book, and it's probably going to remain the same, but it's Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. I watched the entire spoiler discussion on Destiny Sidwell's channel, so I don't see myself ever actually picking up the book, because I already know what the story is about. I already know the spoilers and everything, so I've already, you know, picked that one up. Another one where I watched a spoiler vlog of, instead of a spoiler review, I actually watched a spoiler vlog, and I watched Steph Bohr's spoiler reading vlog on this series, and it's the Selection series by Kiera Cass. And what's crazy is that like, this series actually seems really interesting, but because I already know what it's about, I have no interest in picking it up. So I shouldn't have done that, but you know, I'd be getting bored sometimes. And then the thing was that when I selected this video to watch, I didn't think that I would actually be interested in the book, you know what I mean? So it seems like a really interesting series. Like, from what I've seen, I got all the tea, but I will not be reading that book or reading that series. So the Inheritance Games. So this book in this series, it's just not something that I really feel like is interesting. Like, I've heard people talk about it, and I've heard people like, but I don't really like, I just don't find it to be interesting. That's really all for that one. The next one is, I think it's called, the full name, I have it listed as Addie LaRue, but I think the full book name is called The Invincible Life of Addie LaRue, I think. As popular as this book really is, I've actually heard that this book is really boring. Like, it sounds really boring, the premise sounds really boring, and then on top of that, I know that something in the synopsis is like her making a deal with the devil. Nah, I'll pass. Like boring and a deal with the devil, nah, I'll pass. The next one is Atlas 6. Now, as popular as this book is, not only does the premise not seem very interesting, the book cover is not very interesting or intriguing to me, which is usually a number one, like, drawing feature for me, or number one intriguing feature for me is the cover. Like, if a cover is beautiful, I don't care what the book is about, a lot of times I will still grab it. But in this case, the cover is not interesting to me whatsoever. But not only that, but like, the actual reviews on Goodreads are not that great. So it only seems really like the people on BookTok are the only ones that like that book. Because I know that everyone who's on Goodreads is not necessarily on BookTok, and the reviews, again, are not that great. I think they were like 3.5 or something like that. So they were not really that great. As hyped as this book is on BookTok, it was not really anything crazy. Then we have the Heartstopper series. So this series, I've seen it. I'm not really interested in reading picture books. Like, I know it's like a graphic novel and that's what it's considered to be. Maybe this will change in the future. So this one is like a slight maybe. This one is like not an absolute no, but definitely at the bottom of the list, a possibility of me changing my mind on it. It's just not something I really feel interested in. Now, we have Crescent City series. I don't know if that's what it's called, but the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. Those books are so thick, and they're fantasy. And I'm not really a huge fantasy gal. I be picking up fantasy books here and there just so that I'll have something different on my bookshelf to read if I do ever have an intrigue or an interest. I may even just try it one day on a whim, but this is definitely not one that I would pick up. Like, 2 books that are like 800 pages. No, ma'am. No, thank you. No. Like, we're not doing that. Like, no. And then we have Book of Night by Holly Black, I believe it is. This one had really bad reviews. Like, even people who love Holly Black did not like this book. So definitely wouldn't be something that I'm reading. And it's just not something in general that I would have an interest in. The next are, y'all don't come for me, don't come for me. Song of Achilles. I put Song of Achilles twice on this list. Bruh. Okay, so Song of Achilles and Circe are the 2. And I think Madeline Miller is the author of these 2 books. I'm just not interested in reading about Greek mythology, I think is what it is for these 2. Like, even though there's romance in them, I believe, and there are also some other plots in the story, and it's not merely just Greek mythology. Like, there's other things that are built into the story. It's not merely just about Greek mythology. I'm just not really that interested in reading about Greek mythology, and as much as these 2 books are talked about, because they are talked about quite a bit, it's just not something that intrigues me, if I'm being honest. So the next one is the Shadow and Bones series. Now, this book series, I've heard like very mixed reviews, but more recently I've really heard, honestly, that at least most of the reviews that I've seen on the books, if they are read, they are only read to get to the Six of Crows series, because apparently like they're in the same world, and you're supposed to read Shadow and Bone before you go into the Six of Crows duology. So if they are read simply so that people can get to the Six of Crows, and Six of Crows has better reviews and more people enjoying that duology than the series or the trilogy. So yeah, it's another fantasy, which is not something I'm generally interested in to begin with, but then in combination with the bad reviews, I'm just like, nah, this ain't for me. The next one is going to be an unpopular opinion, really unpopular opinion, but this one is funny you should ask, that new romance book that came out like within like the last year. I'm a romance gal to a T. I love me some romance books, but this one just seems like a rinse and repeat. And then not to mention the cover, it's just not giving. I don't like the cover of this book. So especially with romance, there's only so many different ways that you can do tropes. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so many tropes, and there's so many overloads of books being released within those tropes in the romance category. But there's only so many tropes. There's only so many different variations that you could do of each one. And with this one, the cover has got to be given. If they're not giving, then I'm not picking them up and I'm not reading them. And this cover is just not it. I know a lot of people like the cover, but I personally do not like the cover. The next one, Dune. I have no idea what this book series is about, but it's a no for me. Like, it's a no. The next one is ACOTAR. Now, this one I went back and forth on for a little while because it is a fantasy series. But I've heard, one, it's YA, so they're really easy to get through. And then two, there's romance. Like, there's very heavy in the romance category, or the romance genre in this book, but it is still a fantasy book. And Haley Pham, she almost got me on this one. The covers, not to mention the covers are absolutely beautiful. I love the colors of each individual book. I love the dragon that's on the front. I love it. I love that it is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, at least the first book from what I've heard. But it's still a no. It's still a no. You almost got me, but it's still a no. And then we have the Harry Potter series. So I know that there's a bunch of Harry Potter stands out there. But I think more so than anything, I think I've just like past the time to be able to read them and enjoy them. I know that these are either YA or middle grade books, and a lot of people love them from childhood. And I think the carrying on of continuing to love this series and people that go back to reread it is really just for nostalgia purposes. I could be wrong, but I think the time has passed for me to even read those. And with all the other novels and books that are out there, this would not be my first choice to pick up. So Harry Potter is a no. It's a no. And then the last, this is like an author more so than a book, but the last thing I'm going to talk about is Miss Sally Rooney. Nothing against Miss Sally Rooney whatsoever, but her books just don't give me any like oomph, any interest in actually picking up the books. Like, they're just not, I'm just not interested. I'm just, every time, for one, there's too much back and forth about whether people love it or not. And then on top of that, the last thing that I need is to be confused on when there is dialogue happening and when there is just narrating happening. And apparently in some of her books, or one of her books, she doesn't put quotations when people are talking, when the characters are talking. And I don't need that in my life, okay? The confusion, I just don't need. So you will not catch me reading any of those books. Let me know down in the comments if you agree or you disagree. And thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.